Listen to me. Right now, there's a man inside you, a man the world hasn't met yet. A man who's not begging, not chasing, not proving, but standing, calm, centered, unshakable. And when you finally step into that man, everything changes. Women feel it. The world feels it. Because confidence is not about louder words, bigger muscles, or more money. It's about the energy that says, I don't need you to complete me. I am already complete. And that's what women are insanely attracted to. You've been told lies. That you need to be rich. That you need the perfect looks. That you need status. But the truth, none of it matters if you don't have this one thing. The power to be unshakably rooted in who you are. When you stop chasing approval, women chase you. When you stop fearing rejection, women respect you. When you stop pretending, women see the real you, and they can't look away, because attraction isn't built on desperation. It's built on presence, on self-respect, on a man who doesn't bend for validation. There is a power inside you that you've been ignoring for far too long. Not the power of money, not the power of charm, but the silent, unshakable power of energy. When you walk into a room, people don't just see you. They feel you, long before you open your mouth, long before you shake a hand. Your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. And here's the truth you've never been told. The way you carry your energy defines the way the world responds to you. If you step into a room small, uncertain, desperate for approval, people sense it. If you shrink yourself, waiting for permission, waiting for validation, waiting to be chosen, you'll always be overlooked. But when you own your energy, when you stand tall, shoulders back, eyes steady, you tell the world a silent message. I belong here. And I don't need anyone to confirm it. That's what women feel. That's what leaders respect. That's what separates the man who hides in the corner from the man who commands the entire room without saying a word. Think of the last time you saw someone who owned their energy. They weren't necessarily the richest. They weren't necessarily the most handsome. But something about them was magnetic. They didn't beg for attention. Attention came to them. They didn't need validation. Their presence was validation enough. Why? Because energy is everything. It's invisible, but it's undeniable. When you walk into a room like you belong, you tap into a force more powerful than looks, money, or status combined. You communicate certainty, and certainty is irresistible. Women don't fall for men who are loud just to be noticed. They fall for men whose silence already carries weight. They don't want the man who is desperate for approval. They want the man who knows he is the approval. The man who doesn't seek permission because he already gave it to himself. Owning your energy is not arrogance. It's not cockiness. It's not pretending to be better than others. It's about alignment. It's about showing up as the fullest version of yourself without apology. You know what weak energy looks like? The man who enters a room scanning for approval, changing his personality, depending on who he's with, afraid of being judged. And you know what powerful energy looks like? The man who walks in, grounded, steady, not needing to be the loudest voice, but radiating something undeniable. That's the man who gets respect. That's the man women notice. That's the man people follow. But here's the part you need to hear. Owning your energy doesn't start in the room. It starts before you ever step foot inside. It starts in the way you speak to yourself when no one's listening. It starts in the way you carry yourself when no one's watching. It starts in the decision to stop apologizing for your existence. If you want to own your energy, you must first own your life. Stop playing small. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Stop waiting for the world to crown you worthy. Crown yourself. Validate yourself. Give yourself permission. Because once you do, you no longer walk into rooms hoping they'll like you. You walk into rooms knowing that you like you. And that alone makes the world lean in. The moment you stop asking for permission is the moment you become free. Free to take up space. Free to stand tall. Free to look someone in the eyes without flinching. Free to exist without shrinking. And that freedom is what creates magnetic energy. It's what makes people stop, turn, and wonder, who is that? It's what makes women lean in without even knowing why. Because energy cannot be faked. It can only be owned. There is a prison that most men live in. Invisible, silent, heavy. It's the prison of outcome. Every time you meet a woman, your mind starts racing. Will she like me? Will she reject me? Will I say the wrong thing? You're already trapped. Because the moment you attach yourself to her yes, you've already given away your power. But listen closely. True freedom, true attraction, true magnetism is born when you detach from outcome. When you no longer need her yes. When you no longer fear her no. When you realize that her answer doesn't define you. Think about it. The man who clings to the yes will always be controlled by the possibility of a no. He bends himself. He hides his truth. He tries to impress. He performs. And women feel it instantly. Desperation, neediness, fear. But the man who doesn't care about the outcome, that man is unstoppable. Because he speaks his truth without hesitation. He takes risks without fear. He shows up authentically because he doesn't need her approval to validate his worth. That is the man who women crave. That is the man who carries magnetic confidence. Not because of what he has, but because of what he refuses to give away. His freedom. Picture two men approaching a woman. The first is nervous. His entire body screams, "Please say yes." He measures every word, every gesture, hoping not to mess up. But the second man, he walks up calm, grounded. His energy says, "Whether you say yes or no, I'm still me. And I'm not losing sleep over it." Who do you think she feels drawn to? It's not about looks. It's not about status. It's about energy. One man is enslaved to outcome. The other man is free from it. Freedom is always more attractive than fear. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your truth than her reaction. It means you value your authenticity over her approval. It means you're not here to win her. You're here to express you. That's the shift. And when you embody it, everything changes. Rejection stops feeling like death. No becomes just another step closer to yes. And yes no longer feels like survival. It's just an option. Women are not attracted to men who crumble under the possibility of rejection. They are attracted to men who can stand strong, even in the face of it. The man who can smile when she says no. The man who doesn't flinch when she pulls away. The man who can walk away with dignity still intact. That is the man who leaves an impression. Because his worth is not on trial. Because his confidence isn't conditional. Because he doesn't need her answer to breathe easy. Think of it like this. When you detach from outcome, you shift the frame. You are no longer the applicant waiting to be chosen. You are the chooser. You are evaluating. You are observing. You are asking yourself, does she fit into my world? Does she align with my values? Does she deserve access to my energy? This is not arrogance. It's self-respect. It's knowing that you are the prize, not the beggar. It's knowing that your life is full with or without her. It's knowing that her answer, whether yes or no, does not change your value. And here's the paradox. The moment you no longer need the yes, you get more yes. Because women can sense when a man is free from outcome. It's rare, it's powerful, it's magnetic. Most men operate from fear. Few men operate from freedom. And freedom is irresistible. When you don't fear her no, you speak with courage. When you don't need her yes, you move with authenticity. When you don't cling to outcome, you radiate a calmness that pulls her in without effort. So many men live their entire lives chasing yes, chasing approval, chasing acceptance. And in that chase, they lose themselves. But the man who detaches, he doesn't chase, he attracts. Because his power is not conditional. Because his value isn't up for debate. Detachment is not coldness. Detachment is not indifference. Detachment is power. It is self-respect. It is the ability to love without losing yourself. It is the ability to desire without desperation. It is the ability to connect without collapsing. And that is what women feel in their bones. The man who doesn't need her yes. The man who doesn't fear her no. The man who stands in his truth, no matter the outcome. Every man wants to be followed. Every man wants respect. Every man wants to be trusted. But here's the truth most men refuse to face. You cannot lead anyone until you learn to lead yourself. A man who cannot guide his own steps has no business guiding others. A man who has no discipline in his own life will never be respected as a leader in someone else's. A man who cannot control his emotions will never be trusted to handle the storms of another. Leadership does not start with commanding others. It starts with mastering yourself. Picture this: a man who tells others what to do, but his own life is chaos. He demands respect, yet he doesn't respect himself. He seeks loyalty, yet he betrays his own values. He tries to inspire, yet he cannot even rise from bed with discipline. Do you see the contradiction? True leadership is not about titles. It's not about power. It's not about forcing obedience. It's about alignment. And alignment always begins within. When you lead yourself first, people don't just listen to your words. They feel your example. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to demand to be followed. Your presence becomes the proof. Your actions become the evidence. Your consistency becomes the authority. Because a man who has learned to guide his own life naturally radiates strength. Strength that is calm, not loud. Strength that is stable, not forced. Strength that makes others feel safe to follow. Think of the men who inspire you most. They didn't beg for followers. They didn't chase respect. They simply lived with such discipline, such focus, such conviction, that people couldn't help but want to follow. And this is why women are drawn to a man who leads himself. Because if he cannot lead himself, how could he ever be trusted to lead her? If he cannot manage his emotions, how could he hold her heart? If he cannot guide his own path, how could he provide direction for a family, a vision, a future? She feels it instantly. The difference between the man who is drifting and the man who is leading. Leading yourself first means you stop waiting for motivation. You create it. It means you stop blaming circumstances. You take responsibility. It means you stop following every distraction. You set a direction and stay the course. Leadership begins with the small, invisible decisions you make every day. The decision to rise early when your body says no. The decision to speak truth when fear says stay silent. The decision to keep going when comfort whispers quit. That's leadership. Not on the stage, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows where no one is watching. And here's the paradox. When you learn to lead yourself, you won't even need to ask others to follow. They will follow naturally. Because leadership is not granted by others. It is earned through your own alignment. A man who leads himself is grounded. He is not swayed by the chaos around him. He does not crumble under pressure. He does not beg for direction. He becomes the direction. And that is magnetic. That is rare. That is unforgettable. Ask yourself, do you want to be the man who follows every impulse, every distraction, every fear? Or do you want to be the man who sets a standard so strong that others naturally rise when they stand beside you? Leadership is not about being perfect. It's about being committed. It's about being relentless in your growth. It's about choosing discipline over comfort, purpose over distraction, truth over approval. When you can guide your own life with clarity, when you can stand rooted in your own vision, when you can lead yourself through storms without breaking, then, and only then, will others trust you to lead them. Women do not want men who demand leadership with words. They want men who embody leadership with action. Men who know where they are going. Men who don't wait for direction, but create it. Men who carry themselves with such purpose that others feel safe, inspired, and challenged in their presence. Because a man who can lead himself is not a boy pretending to be strong. He is a man who has built his strength, a man who has earned his authority, a man whose actions and words are one. And that man does not need to prove he is a leader. He already is. Every man dreams of being respected. Respected by women, respected by his peers, respected by the world. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. Respect does not begin with others. It begins with you. If you don't respect yourself, no one else will. And if you don't protect your boundaries, the world will tear them apart. A boundary is not a wall. It's not coldness. It's not arrogance. A boundary is the invisible line that says, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what I will accept and what I will never tolerate. Without boundaries, you are not strong. You are fragile. Without boundaries, you are not kind, you are weak. Without boundaries, you are not generous, you are disposable. Because the world does not respect men who bend for everything. The world respects men who stand for something. Think about it. Every time you let someone cross a line that mattered to you, what happened? A part of you shrank. A part of you resented. A part of you knew you betrayed yourself just to keep the peace, just to be liked, just to avoid conflict. And what was the result? You lost respect, not only from others, but from yourself. Because people don't just hear your words, they watch your actions. They test your limits. They feel your strength or your lack of it. If you don't respect your own boundaries, you teach others that your lines are flexible, that your values are negotiable, that your dignity has a price. And once they know that, they will never truly respect you. Respecting your boundaries is not about being aggressive. It's about being firm. It's not about shouting. It's about standing. It's not about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. The man who respects his boundaries doesn't need to beg for respect. He commands it silently, because people can sense when a man has lines he will not cross. And people can sense when a man will fold under pressure. Women especially feel this. A woman does not fall for the man who gives her everything at the cost of himself. She falls for the man who can love her deeply, but never lose himself in the process. She falls for the man who can say yes with conviction and no with equal conviction. Because a man without boundaries is not a man. He is a shadow. She may use him. She may tolerate him. But she will never respect him. Because how could she respect a man who does not respect himself? Boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are sacred. They protect your energy. They protect your vision. They protect your identity. Without them, you become a servant to everyone else's demands. You become a puppet pulled by every string. You become a man who exists for others, but never for himself. But with boundaries, you become solid. You become clear. You become grounded. You send a silent message into every room. This is my line. This is my standard. This is who I am. And people feel it. They may not always like it. They may even resist it. But they will respect it. Respecting your boundaries means you know your worth. It means you know your time is valuable. It means you know your energy is sacred. It means you know your love has depth, but it is not unlimited for those who do not deserve it. Weak men say yes to everything. Strong men say yes to the right things and no to the wrong things. Weak men bend under pressure. Strong men bend for nothing that violates their values. That's why strong men are remembered. Because they were not for sale. Because they stood where others fell. Because their boundaries were not negotiable. Think of history's greatest leaders. They were not the men who pleased everyone. They were not the men who said yes to every request. They were the men who stood firm in their convictions, even when the world hated them for it. That is leadership. That is respect. That is what it means to honor your boundaries. But boundaries are not just external. They are internal. They are not just about saying no to others. They are about saying no to yourself. The boundary that says, I will not waste my time on distractions. The boundary that says, I will not poison my body with what weakens me. The boundary that says, I will not let fear dictate my choices. The boundary that says, I will not betray my vision for comfort. Because self-respect is built in private, in the choices no one sees, in the moments no one applauds, in the decisions that define whether you live as a king or die as a slave to your impulses. And here is the brutal truth. Every time you dishonor your boundaries, you weaken your own voice. Every time you betray your standards, you bleed your own strength. Every time you compromise your dignity, you lose a piece of the man you were meant to be. But every time you respect your boundaries, you reinforce your power. Every time you hold your line, you build your authority. Every time you stand firm, you rise higher. This is why boundaries are not optional. They are essential. Without them, you cannot lead. Without them, you cannot attract. Without them, you cannot grow. Because the foundation of all respect begins with one question. Do you respect yourself enough to honor your own boundaries? There is a silence that kills more men than failure. A silence that keeps them small. A silence that buries their truth under layers of fear. The silence of a man who knows what he believes, but is too afraid to say it. And then there are men who speak, not to please, not to perform, not to impress, but to express, to let the world know, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and I will not apologize for it. That is conviction. And conviction is magnetic. Think about the men who move you, the men whose words cut through the noise and hit you in the chest. It's not their vocabulary. It's not their eloquence. It's their certainty. You don't remember the perfect sentences. You remember the fire behind the words. Because conviction is not about the beauty of speech. It's about the weight of truth. When a man speaks with conviction, his words carry. They echo. They stay. Because they were born from a place deeper than performance. They were born from the core of who he is. Most men live in the shadows of impression. They speak to impress women. They speak to impress crowds. They speak to impress the world. And in the process, they lose themselves. Because when you speak to impress, you always bend. You bend your truth. You bend your values. You bend your voice just to be liked, just to be accepted, just to fit in. But when you speak with conviction, you stop bending. You stop performing. You stop chasing validation. And suddenly, the world leans in. Conviction is power. Conviction is presence. Conviction is the difference between a whisper that disappears and a word that shifts the room. When you speak with conviction, women feel it. They don't just hear your words. They feel your certainty. They don't just listen, they believe. Because conviction is proof. Proof that you are not afraid to be yourself. Proof that you are not seeking permission. Proof that you are not another man trying to fit the mold. And women are not drawn to men who blend in. They are drawn to men who stand out. Not because they try to, but because they dare to. Speaking with conviction does not mean shouting. It does not mean dominating. It does not mean talking over others. Conviction can be quiet. Conviction can be calm. Conviction can be the soft voice that refuses to waver. It is not about volume. It is about weight. The weight of truth. The weight of certainty. The weight of a man who knows himself. But here's the question you must face. How can you speak with conviction if you have never faced your own truth? Conviction begins with clarity. Clarity of who you are. Clarity of what you value. Clarity of what you stand for. If you don't know yourself, your words will always be hollow. If you don't know your values, your speech will always shift. If you don't know your truth, you will always speak like an echo instead of a voice. That is why most men fade into the background, because they never built conviction within. To speak with conviction, you must first build it in silence. Conviction is born in the struggles you endured. Conviction is forged in the nights you refused to quit. Conviction is carved out of the pain you survived and the lessons you refuse to forget. When you've bled for something, your words about it carry weight. When you've lived through something, your voice about it holds power. When you've stood for something, your speech about it commands respect. Conviction is earned, not borrowed. And that's why it is so rare. Imagine two men. One speaks with perfect words, polished lines, rehearsed charm. The other speaks raw, unpolished, but real. Which man leaves the deeper impact? Always the second. Because conviction beats perfection. Truth beats polish. Certainty beats performance. A woman does not remember the clever lines you rehearsed. She remembers the certainty in your tone, the steadiness in your eyes, the fire in your truth. That is why conviction attracts. Not because it impresses, but because it expresses. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop speaking to impress, people are impressed. The moment you stop speaking to be liked, people like you more. The moment you stop chasing approval, you earn respect. Because people crave truth in a world drowning in performance. They crave real in a world addicted to fake. They crave conviction in a world full of doubt. Speaking with conviction also means owning your no, the courage to disagree, the courage to speak against the crowd, the courage to hold your line when everyone else folds. Conviction is not about echoing the loudest voices. It's about standing firm in your own, even if you stand alone. And this is where most men collapse. They abandon their voice to fit in. They abandon their truth to avoid conflict. They abandon their conviction to escape rejection. But the man who keeps speaking, even when the room turns silent, is the man people remember. Conviction is not just spoken, it is lived. If your words are strong, but your actions are weak, your conviction is fake. But when your actions and words align, your voice carries unshakable power. Because people may doubt your opinions. They may resist your perspective. They may challenge your stance. But they cannot deny your authenticity when your life backs your words. And that is what gives conviction its fire, consistency. The man who says what he means and means what he says. The man whose yes means yes and no means no. The man whose words are not decorations, but declarations. Conviction is not about being right. It's about being real. It's not about proving. It's about expressing. It's not about impressing. It's about declaring with every breath, this is me. This is my truth. This is my voice. And when you do that, you don't just speak. You move people. You don't just talk. You transform. You don't just exist. You leave a mark.